welcome to WiseTake.com. This is CK013. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And yes, we are bringing you another NBA DFS podcast. It is Tuesday, February 28th, 2017, and we've got ourselves a nice little 6-game slate for today. Not too much going on the injury news, surprisingly. I know before the All-Star break, it was pretty much every single slate was impinging on injury news, and last night even there were some key decisions that we had to wait and find out some information on before making crucial slate decisions. We found out that Kyle Lowry is out most likely he's out for the remainder of the regular season, which I think is a huge blow to Toronto. I think when they got Ibaka, I don't think they had in mind Lowry would be going down. So instead of having 3 potential scoring options each game, now that it seems like they're back down to 2 with Ibaka and DeRozan. And we noticed yesterday that DraftKings is trying to be a little sharper on the pricing. And yesterday, I thought they did a pretty good job of that. It was difficult. I ended up doing okay. I didn't play any cash games just because it was that difficult. It was that hard for me to decide which guys that I wanted to go with outside of DeRozan. Now, DeRozan was a pretty clear play to me just because he was coming off a game before where he didn't play all that well. And a guy like DeRozan typically is going to have too many bad shooting games in a row. And he was also in a pace-up spot in a place where jump shooters thrive, Madison Square Garden, against a team that plays literally no defense, the New York Knicks. So it seemed like it was a pretty easy matchup to lock in there. And outside of him, though, to me it was tough. It seemed like the value was going to be forced. There were a couple value guys that went off, but it wasn't like there was no indication to play those guys. There was no reason to run over and lock those guys in your lineups. Courtney Lee, I think, had a phenomenal game, which I heard a couple podcasts. There was a couple people who mentioned Courtney Lee about people were saying, Toronto's not a very good defensive team, and a guy like Courtney Lee could go off with Porzingis out. The rest of the team has to pick up some slack, and it was funny because I think at the time there was like these people that were saying to play Courtney Lee were getting laughed under the table. And, I get it. I didn't play Courtney Lee. I'm a Knicks fan, and I still didn't play Courtney Lee. I very rarely do. But he was somebody that you kind of had to have at his price. I think he put up 38 DraftKings points, and I think his price was around like 4,600 or so. So he was an example of somebody needed to have. And we see this time and time again, and there were some options that, in the past, DraftKings may not have adjusted the prices so quickly. For instance, a guy like Corey Joseph, who, even if he was in the 4s, would be a no-brainer to play, considering the minutes and the role that he's stepping into. But they priced him in the mid-5s, so that makes you think about it, because if he doesn't hit that 25 to 30-point range, then you overpaid for him. And you can't afford to do that. Even last night, last night was a lower scoring slate than we've seen recently. I think even on DraftKings, I think the top score barely broke 300. So, it's every slate is different. And last night we got an example of that. And today with 6 games, there's not too much injury news. We find ourselves in a similar situation. It's not such a no-brainer as to which guys to plug in and cash. It's going to take a little bit of thinking work. I think today's slate's a little easier as far as figuring out the cash games. But still, unless we hear some injury news now, we're waiting on a few things which we'll talk about. There are some things that could potentially happen, but there's nothing that we're waiting on that we're expecting, or nothing that, as of now to the naked eye, that there's really nothing there. So we're not waiting to hear if Kyle Lowry is going to play, for instance. We know the situation here. The only potential that we have for a big adjustment or a big shakeup of the slate is if Golden State decides to rest their players. So we'll use that as a segue to talk about the brief injuries, and then we're going to try to go position by position and just talk about some of the guys that maybe stand out a little bit on today's slate. So I had already mentioned Golden State, and I think that they're probably the biggest news we're waiting on. I'm not really expecting anybody to rest from any other team, and honestly, I don't think Golden State is in a position to rest their guys just because they have not been playing all that well lately. Now, I know they have been winning, but against the 76ers, despite the fact that they won by 12, that game was a lot closer than I think the score indicated. And I think that just expecting them to blow teams out on the road is not necessarily the way to go, or at least it hasn't been this season in general. And um, I really like that game. I think it could be a very competitive game. Golden State is favored by 6.5, and they're on the back end of a back-to-back. So I think it could be a really competitive game, and I do like the game. Um, but at the same time, we have to wait and see if Steve Kerr is going to rest any of these guys. We know Kevin Durant was playing through a hand injury. Um, Clay and Steph kind of had to pick up the slack that game he was out, and then he returned yesterday and played, so all three of them played. So I wouldn't be surprised. We're at a point now where Golden State's pretty much got they're obviously in the playoffs, and I don't think they're too far from clinching that first seed. And so you got to wonder if Steve Kerr is going to start to get conservative with his guys a little bit here. And I don't really know if that's his shtick. It really hasn't been. We've seen Kevin Durant playing blowouts well into the fourth quarter. So I don't necessarily know if that's something that, Steve Kerr likes to do. He seems to like to play his guys. He likes to keep his guys in a rhythm, and that's fine. I could understand that. And but that's going to be the biggest injury news we're waiting for. They are the back end of a back-to-back. They're on the road, and they're playing Washington. So honestly, I thought they would rest some of their guys, maybe rest Durant yesterday and have him play today, just because this is a little bit more of a high-profile game. And I watched some highlights of when these guys played last year, and it was a lot of threes, kind of similar to the Cleveland game. I'm not really going to compare that Cleveland Washington game was the game of the year, hands down. So I'm not comparing it to that, but we know that with Golden State, if you want to win, you got to be able to hit your threes, and Washington have some guys that can do that, so that should be interesting. Anyway, so we talked about the Golden State guys with the potential rest. Not that I'm expecting it. I didn't hear they were going to rest. I'm just thinking they could. So that if they do that, you're not completely shocked. But I mean, as of now, I would assume they are playing because, like I said, they haven't been playing all that well. So I don't know if Steve Kerr is going to want to rest their guys when they're not really playing all that well to begin with. I mean, listen, they're playing well individually. They're playing well, but they're not blowing out teams in the traditional fashion that we're used to seeing Golden State blow out teams. They're not dominating from start to finish. When they do win in these blowouts, it's typically later in the game that they kind of step up and take over. Anyway, moving on from Golden State, Evan Turner is out with his hand at Detroit. Kenneth Faried is questionable with his back against Chicago. Paul Zipser is expected to be out with an ankle against Denver. Michael Carter-Williams is questionable with a knee injury, but I do believe he did not practice yesterday. So, or was it yesterday? From what I understand, he missed the most recent practice. So we're going to have to try to pay attention to that a little bit there. Victor Oladipo is questionable with a back against Utah. Cody Zeller is questionable with a quad against the Lakers. Miles Plumlee is out with a calf against the Lakers, and Ramon Sessions is out with a knee against the Lakers. So that's the injury news. As you can see, there's really nothing too significant. Obviously, if Cody Zeller plays or not is going to determine whether or not Frank Kaminsky's in a good spot or not. If Zeller plays, obviously, I think Kaminsky goes from a good cash play to a good GPP play, just because of the fact that Zeller, one, has been injury prone. The last time he played, he ended up leaving the game early because his quads were bothering him. So, his quads have been the reason he's been out this whole time. So, I wouldn't go too heavy if Zeller's in. I wouldn't go nuts because Kaminsky's price is a little outrageous. Paying $6,900 for Kaminsky, that's steep. But I will do it in the right matchup, which I think against the Lakers is a decent matchup, and I will do it if he's gonna be the guy getting all the minutes. And we don't know for sure if that's going to be the case. So that's probably the most important injury news outside of hearing if Golden State rests their guys, is to see if Cody Zeller plays or not. Obviously, Oladipo has implications. He's questionable with a back injury, but they're playing Utah, so I wouldn't like Oladipo. The only guy that I would like from that game is Westbrook, and that's only in a tournament. We've seen people shy away from him in these tougher matchups against Memphis, Utah, and then we've seen him still show that dominance at times. Has he done it against these teams before? Absolutely, which is why he's only a good GPP play, and I would not put him in cash at all. But he's Westbrook, and you always got to consider him. And when you have a feeling his ownership is going to be low, which I think it's I'm pretty sure it will be on a slate like this, where there's not really a lot of value that's so obvious. I do think he'll be under-owned. So I think that playing Westbrook in tournaments is a very interesting way to go. I don't know how much exposure I'll have to him. But to be honest, I don't really play Westbrook and Harden all that much anymore anyway, just because I prefer, first of all, I usually put majority of my playing game, my my balance for the day or whatever it is. I usually put that in cash games. And guys like Harden and Westbrook, unless there's like no options and they're clearly going to dominate, and there's really no mid tier there to even keep you up with that roster. I don't really play those guys too much just because they really, really take a toll on the rest of your lineup. Now, and I do play them in GPPs where I'm trying to win everything just because they do have that upside that is unattainable and that does separate them so far from the rest of the field. But this is a situation where tournament only. It's going to be a pace down game. It's the lowest total on the night, and that's pretty much it. GPPs only. And obviously, if Oladipo does play, that'll alleviate some of the pressure off of Westbrook. But if he doesn't, it's going to be all on Westbrook again. And we've seen it's been a little interesting with Taj Gibson and Dougie McDermott getting worked in a little bit. Things are interesting. It's not. Westbrook is not the only guy who has to score. He does have some help now. Obviously, Enes Kanter's back. He had a pretty big game in his last contest. So they have some options besides Westbrook. But obviously, Oladipo is a major part of that offense. So if he doesn't play, it is going to shift back on Westbrook. Anyway, that's going to be pretty much it for the injury portion. So I'm going to go position by position, just talk about some of these guys. So we talked about Westbrook. He's 12-1. Even though that seems expensive, we just saw him at 13. So this is kind of that Utah discount that we're used to seeing. I think John Wall at 10-3 is a very, very interesting play. Again, I don't know if we can lock him in cash necessarily just because of his price, but I do think he's in a great spot. The only thing is Golden State does have Zaza back, which means that they do have their rim protector back. And John Wall is not really a shooter. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to diss the guy or anything, but he's not really a shooter. He's a guy that gets to the hole. And with Zaza down there, that could be tough. But he is John Wall. He does have mega upside. He seems to step it up for these big-time games. And at 10-3, I think he's a fine alternative to Westbrook in one of the highest totals of the night. I think the highest total of the night in a game that should be fairly close, at least for most of the game. Obviously, under Wall, you got Steph Curry, who is 9.5K on DraftKings. Again, with Curry, I don't know if I would play him alone. Now, I do know that when I watched the game last year, Curry went off, and they didn't have Durant, obviously, last year. And Curry just kept chucking up threes, and he was hitting. So if Curry's if he's gonna be able to sustain that and hit those threes again, then I think he's in a phenomenal spot. But we do have a decent amount of options at point guard. I don't think it's as deep as we are used to. There's only 6 games, so how deep could it be, right? But there are a lot of interesting options, I think, outside of these top-tier guys. Even Damian Lillard at 84 against Detroit. He's matched up with Reggie Jackson. I'm not really afraid of that. Now, they may put KCP on him, but I don't think they can because they're going to need KCP to cover McCollum, who's just as much as a scoring threat this season as Lillard. With that said, we've got McCollum is 7-1. It seems like a very interesting matchup. His price is way more attractive than Lillard's, and I think that this season, his upside has been pretty similar to Lillard's, if not better than Lillard's. But again, if he's going to have KCP on him, that can make his night a little more difficult. So I think that if you're going to target a guard from this team, I think it's got to be Portland, taking your chances against either Ish Smith or Reggie Jackson. Kemba Walker at 8-3. We know we don't like to play Kemba on the road, but he does find himself in a phenomenal matchup against the Lakers. The only issue is I think Batum is also in a good matchup. I think that even Randall's in a really good matchup, so we don't know for sure if Walker's going to be the guy who gets all that usage. But I know that his matchup is phenomenal. His price is 8.3. He's in a pace-up spot. So you got Lillard, who's $100 more. It seems to me like I think most people would rather take their chances with Kemba at 8.3 over Lillard at 8.4. Now, that's not to say that either of these guys will be popular because I think that John Wall, I think Westbrook, and I think John Wall and Curry are going to be 2 of the premier plays here, especially Wall. I like Wall. Just on the eye test, just looking at it, going in with nothing and just kind of who do you like just for initial look. John Wall looks very attractive, even at 10-3 in this matchup. Mike Conley at 7-9 against Phoenix. This also, it looks like a dreamy spot for Mike Conley, but we've seen him in the past blow these kind of situations, so I wouldn't go all in on him. Now, at 7-9, his price is certainly attractive, but we have seen him around this price tag play these phenomenal matchups. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure he played Cleveland recently, and he just completely dudded. So I played him in his last contest against Denver. He did phenomenal for me. I think 49.5 DraftKings points. So I'm not trying to hate on the dude. I do like Connolly. I like playing him. But let's see. On February 8th, he played Phoenix, and he got 34 and a half DraftKings points. His price was only 7,500, and he was at home for that contest as well. So he didn't play bad. He shot 7 for 10 from the field. It seemed like he played pretty well. So I definitely think he's in play. One thing with Connolly that's kind of shifted me away from him, at least in cash games, is his inconsistency. I think he's been pretty inconsistent for the most part. The guy can score, he'll score 27 points one day, all of a sudden turn around, put up 45, and then the next game put up 22. So it's a risk, and I think at 7,900, it's an interesting risk. I think it is fairly attractive, but I don't think too many people are going to go. I don't think too many people are going to go with Connolly just because there are a lot of other options. Now, I could be wrong. He could be mega chalky because initially he seems like he's the guy in the best matchup here. In a pace-up spot against a bad defensive team, he's a pretty good defender himself. So, I definitely see the merit in playing a guy like Connolly for sure. Eric Bledsoe, 7.8. He's in a pace down spot. I'm not crazy about him here against Connolly, and Memphis in general are good teams, whether Connolly guards them or even they'll have Tony Allen on Booker. They're both pretty good defenders, especially Allen. So I'm not crazy about Bledsoe, but at his price, with his upside, definitely a GPP flyer option. D'Angelo Russell has a matchup with Kemba. D'Angelo Russell is 6.5K on DraftKings, and I think that price is fine. I think that he's another one of those tournament-type players because he's too inconsistent to really trust in a cash game. And it's not so much that his performance is inconsistent because we've seen him with 50-point upside. He put up 50 and a half DraftKings points against Westbrook. But his minutes are suspect. In that contest, he played 36 minutes. The contest before, 28. Contest after, 29. So the issue with D'Angelo Russell is his coach. His coach is no longer sticking to the script and just playing, his normal starters, normal guys, 30 to 35 minutes every game. He's not. We don't know if Russell's going to play 30 minutes. It's not a lock, and that's why his price has come down so much, even though he just put up a 50-burger recently. Julius Randle, same thing. As much as I like Julius Randle, as much as I think he's got game, we don't know how much he's going to play. And it kind of stinks. It kind of makes you want to stay away from the Lakers a little bit. But in GPP's 65, he's certainly an option. George Hill is going up against Westbrook. He's 6.4. I think George Hill's been playing better recently because his minutes have been up. We saw a little period where his minutes were kind of down. They're right back up. It would appear that they're right back up again. He does have a matchup with Westbrook. I typically like targeting guys against Westbrook. But I know in the past, I don't see any game logs now, but in the past I have played Hill against Westbrook and it hasn't really gone well. So he's definitely only a tournament guy. I would not trust him in cash, not even in a good matchup against Westbrook, especially not when the total is so low and all the other games, literally all the other games on the slate are significantly higher total-wise. Rajon Rondo at 5,400. His price did come up, but I think that's because of when Michael Carter-Williams is out, they've been having no choice but to play Rondo. Now, I don't know if that's going to continue to be the trend. Cameron Artis-Payne is really not playing a lot for this team. That could change. It could just be because they're giving him some time to learn the system. But he's playing, very, very. I think he played like 12 or 13 minutes last game. So Grant and Rondo have been the guys that they're going to. And with Michael Carter-Williams out, that definitely opens up more opportunity for Rondo. I just don't know if I want to pay $5,400 for a guy that's been, 45 or less for the past X amount of weeks. All of a sudden he's 54. Yeah, he's in a phenomenal matchup, but we don't know if they're going to give him the run. Now, if we knew they were going to give him the run, if we found out he was starting, or if they said Rondo's going to play about 25 minutes tonight, absolutely, I'd take a shot on Rondo in a phenomenal matchup against Denver, but we don't know that. We're still waiting to find out if that's the case. So, against Cleveland, he took 12 shots. Against Phoenix, he took 5. So the variance is there. And Rondo's a high assist guy. This is a matchup where I would imagine guys like Butler and Wade could really smash if they give him a shot. But we don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. Approach, and definitely a tournament play. But if you find out that he's going to get the run, I think he becomes interesting. He's a good play overall. Reggie Jackson at 5.3 against Portland. He's in a great matchup. And he finally, against Boston, played regular minutes. He played 34 minutes against Boston. Now, he only got 33 DraftKings points, but on that day, his price was only $5K. His price is only $5,300. This is a guy that's not. I don't think he's going to put up 50. He's not that guy. But he could put up that solid 30 to 35 DraftKings points in that range. And at 5,300 in a cash game, that'd be phenomenal. The question is, can we trust him in cash when we obviously see he's kind of falling out of favor with head coach Van Gundy over there? So that's the question you're going to have to ask yourself before you play a guy like him. So with this price tag, I would say, a starter like Reggie Jackson at 5,300, I'd love to put him in my cash games. But we don't know. His minutes have been inconsistent lately, and his performance has been extremely volatile lately. So that makes me worry about playing a guy like him in cash. So just to give you an example, so I think somebody that I would rather play in cash at that similar price tag would be Jameer Nelson. Jameer Nelson is 5,400 on DraftKings, and he's been the guy. He's been the guy playing the minutes. Now, we've seen him take a little bit of a dip. Against Sacramento, he only played 29. Against Brooklyn, he only played 22. But against Memphis, he did play 32, and we know that Moutier has kind of been added to that crap list. I don't want to. He's not getting any run. It seems like the team's kind of given up on Moutier a little bit, and then that could change. It seems like Murray. They have Murray. They want to give him a little more opportunity, but it still seems to me that if they want to win, Jameer Nelson, at least for this season, is going to be their guy. So I don't think they're going to veer too far from that. So I definitely think that Jameer Nelson is an interesting option for both cash and GPPs, because even when he didn't play the minutes, so say against Brooklyn, he only played 22 minutes against Brooklyn, he still scored 23.25 DraftKings points. So his price was 6,700 at the time, so he crushed you that day. If he does that today at 5,400, yeah, it's not great, but he's not going to crush you. So I think it's okay to take a shot on him. I like Jameer Nelson a lot today at 5,400 against Chicago, a team that still seems to be without a real, true point guard. There's a few other guys we could talk about, but we're running low on time, so we're going to move on. Couple guys. So Jimmy Butler's in a phenomenal matchup against Denver. You don't really need me to talk too much about that. I think Batum at 7.5 is fine. Bradley Beal at 7.2 is very interesting. Now, I wonder if they're going to keep Curry on Wall or if they're going to put Clay on Wall. If they put Clay on Wall, that's going to really open things up for Bradley Beal. So we're going to want exposure to this Golden State-Washington game for sure. Either way, even if Golden State rests their guys, maybe we won't want the Washington guys too much or whatever, but we're going to want that there's going to be value to be had if that's the case. So we're going to have to pay close attention in that game. Luckily for us, it is one of the earlier games, so we should have all the information set before lock. We talked about McCollum already. Devin Booker at 6.5. I'm not crazy about Booker today. I think he's going to have some Tony Allen defense. I do like Tony Allen. He's extremely cheap at 48, and Phoenix is a bad defensive team, so I do think he's interesting. Gary Harris at 5.9. That's a little too expensive for me to play Harris, but in cash games, he's been playing a lot. You're looking, if you want 5x out of him, you're looking for about, 30 points, I think it is. So I think he's okay. He's just not somebody that I think at 5.9, I don't think I want to pay that price for him. Caldwell Pope, his price came back up 5.9. He's in a phenomenal matchup today. He certainly is, but I don't want to pay 5.9 for this guy. Last time I played him, he was dirt cheap and he screwed me. But, and listen, I'm all about the short-term memory. You guys know that. But at 5.9, he's got upside, but tournament only. That's all I'm saying. I will have exposure to him in tournaments, but tournaments only. I mentioned Tony Allen at 4.8. Clarkson has been crushing quietly. I do like Clarkson. He's 5.2. But if you look at his logs, he's been playing pretty well with Lou Williams gone. And I think as a tournament flyer, if you're looking for a real cheapie, obviously you got Alex Abrinas if Oladipo's out. He's 3.9. He don't do much, but he is only 3.9, and he's playing Utah, so that's tough. But, of course, you got Vince Carter at 3.8 against Phoenix. I think that's a pretty good spot, pretty good price for Vince Carter. I don't mind playing him. If you look at his logs, he's dirt cheap, and he does play minutes. He's playing consistently in that mid-20s line. So at 3,800, if he can get me 20 DraftKings points, I'm happy with that against Phoenix. And I think against Phoenix, that's very, very feasible. Anyway, moving on, small forward. Another shooting guard that I didn't talk about on the same team. Dwayne Wade is in a phenomenal spot against Chicago. Obviously, the entire Chicago team's in a great spot against Denver. Pace-up spot, they're home, and Denver hasn't been playing all that well. I do like the Denver guys, too, don't get me wrong, but there's really only one guy I like from Denver, and you guys probably could figure out who that is. But yeah, I do like Wade a lot at 7,500. Moving on to small forward, KD is obviously in a pretty good spot. Gordon Hayward is going to have Roberson defense, so just be aware of that. I'm not saying Hayward can't do anything because he's a good shooter, but tournaments only. You're not going to want to trust that in cash. Wilson Chandler, I think if Fareed is out, Wilson Chandler should start at the 4. His price is 66, but I think the matchup might be tough because if he goes off, they'll stick Butler on him. If Gallo goes off, they'll still Butler on him. So Butler's going to guard whichever one of these guys is hot. But I do think Wilson Chandler's in an interesting spot because he should be playing the 4 at 6.6. I'm not crazy about the price, but definitely an interesting option. Marcus Morris in a pretty good spot at 5.9. His price is creeping up there to a point where I don't really want to do it. TJ Warren is 5.5. I like TJ Warren a lot going forward. I have been playing him ever since the trade deadline, but I don't really like him against Memphis today, and I think that is self-explanatory as to why. Michael Gilchrist at 5.4. He's in a pretty good spot here. He's going to have a matchup with Ingram. He's a good defender. The problem is his minutes have been very inconsistent. Against the Clippers, he only played 21, and that was a close game. He played 21 minutes. Even against Sacramento, he only played 27. Now, when he gets the run, he's been playing well. Look at he put up 12 DraftKings points against the Clippers, but again, he only played 21 minutes. Against Sacramento, 31.5 DraftKings points in 27 minutes. Against Detroit, 42 DraftKings points in 39 minutes. And against Toronto, 33 DraftKings points against 36. And his price was never above 5.2 in any of those games. So I think this is a very good spot for Kid Gilchrist. We just don't know about the minutes. And that's pretty much been the issue the whole time. Moving on to power forward, Draymond Green bounced back yesterday. I think a lot of people saw that coming. And at 7.4, he's in a phenomenal spot today against Markieff Morris. Frank Kaminsky at 6.9. We talked about it's going to be impingent on if Zeller is out. The price is high. It's not cheap anymore. But against the Lakers, he is in a pretty good spot. So I would consider him if Zeller is out. I think I would play him in cash. Markieff Morris at 6.3. His price is starting to come back down to normal. I'm not crazy about his matchup, but he is a decent three-point shooter, and I think that's the way you got to attack Golden State. So I think he's in play. Julius Randle at 5.7. Tournaments only just because his minutes have been inconsistent. We don't know what we're going to get. I think Zebo against Phoenix is in a phenomenal spot. We've seen him with that upside. It's just tough to trust him, and it's tough to trust him in cash because we don't know what we're going to get. I think that's kind of been the moral of the story of what we learned from this guy. Mirotic has been killing it. He's in a phenomenal matchup against Denver at 5K, so I love Mirotic today. I think John Lure's in a great spot. Tournaments only, I haven't really found any solid cash game plays just yet. So the guys I'm naming off, they're more for tournaments. Bobby Portis at 4.4. His price came down, but his minutes have also dropped. He's not getting the run that we thought he was going to get replacing Taj. And then moving on to center, Drummond is 8.2. He's way up there, but he is in a good spot against Nurkic. Marcus Gasol, phenomenal matchup, 7.6 against Phoenix, and Phoenix has been playing their younger guys, so I think Gasol could really go nuts here. Rudy Gobert, pretty good spot against OKC. They're going to need him there with Kanter and Adams. They're going to need Gobert on the floor. Let's see. Steven Adams against Utah, I'm not crazy about. It's a pace-down spot. Mason Plumlee against Chicago is okay at 5,300. I'm not crazy. I'm not really rushing to play him, but his price is interesting. I do like Nurkic today against Detroit in a bounce-back spot at 5.8. I know that Drummond is good, but I still like targeting centers against him. I really do. And I'm going to continue to do that. So I think Nurkic is very, very in play at 5.8K. His price is coming up a little bit, but I think he's got it in him to hit that. So, and they're going to need him against Drummond. So I do like him today. A couple guys that I didn't talk about. Klay Thompson's an interesting spot at 6.8 against Washington. I like Otto Porter against Golden State. He's their best three-point shooter, at least on an efficiency basis. So at 6K, I love Porter today. I love Tobias Harris at 5.3 against Portland. I think he's a phenomenal spot. My favorite center today has got to be the Joker. I know he's been burning people left and right, but his price has finally come down to 8.9, and it's going to be very hard for me to pass up on Jokic at 8.9. The total looks nice and juicy. Chicago is typically a slower-paced team, but against Denver, I think they might have to play a little faster. The total is 222 for a Chicago Bulls game. So without a doubt, the best two games total-wise are going to be this Golden State the Golden State game and the Denver game. And I really like the Joker today. I really do. He'll definitely be in my cash and GPP lineups if I could fit him. I can't make that promise because I don't know if I could fit him for sure. I'm going to be dummy lineups, but I do like him. JaMychal Green is an interesting value option at 4.2K against Phoenix. I like his spot today for sure. His minutes have been inconsistent, but his price is cheap enough. You really only need, for 5X in a cash game, you really only need, say if you got 25 from this guy, you'd be happy. And I think that's feasible. And I think that his minutes have been consistent enough that you can at least expect him to play about 24, I think. So I do like JaMychal Green in a pace-up spot, get some rebounds. Both of the young guys down low, so I do like him. Trying to see if there's anybody I missed, but I think we're good. I think that's pretty much it. Obviously, I'm sure there's a lot of guys I didn't get to, but that's just a general outlook. It's going to be a very fun slate. I think that the obvious games to go after are there. I wouldn't sleep on the Portland-Detroit game. I think there's a couple plays in there we could find, and even the Phoenix and Memphis game. Maybe not so much on the Phoenix side, but on the Memphis side, I think there's some interesting ways you can go there. But I love the Chicago-Denver game. I love the Golden State Wizards, Golden State and the Wizards. I think that's a pretty obvious one. I don't think you guys needed me to say that, but yeah, it's gonna be fun. I love the Joker today. That's pretty much the closing statement. I like Porter a lot, but I like the Joker's my guy today. I like Joker, Butler, Wade, all these guys. They're phenomenal. I love that game in general. I really do. And so anyway, that's gonna wrap it up for us for today's position by position breakdown. Make sure that you are paying attention to the news as always before lock, and just make sure that the Golden State guys aren't resting. If they are resting, that's some value that's opening up. And if they're not resting, attack that game. Attack the Chicago and Denver game, and just have fun. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you watching. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on Podbean, give us a follow, leave us some feedback. And if you're listening on iTunes, subscribe to the channel. And of course, give us some reviews. Give us some bump us up those rating charts. We'd really appreciate that. If you're not a member of WiseTake.com, please go to WiseTake.com and sign up now. Membership is free. You get access to our free NBA DFS projections, cheat sheets. We have some other tools on there for you. And, of course, we have the forums. We're trying to get a community going. We're trying to build on that. So I'm going to try to do some stuff with that in the upcoming weeks and see if we can get that going. Anyway, guys, really appreciate you guys watching as always. We should have an interesting slate tomorrow. Tomorrow's a huge monster slate. It'd be great for tournaments, and I'm trying to bring a guest on, so we'll see how that goes. Anyway, guys, good luck today. Hope you win. I think I just blew my catchphrase. I'm going to say it anyway. As always, good luck.